Well, good evening, everybody, and once again, welcome to your live Investment Dominator Q&A call. And again, I'm Warren Davis. I'm glad to be here with you on this beautiful Monday. There's quite a few of you online. We're at Monday, August the 19th, and 2019, and we are so glad to be here with you. Wanted to get started with a couple of public service announcements that I think maybe all of you may already know about. We will be having a two-day workshop this week on Thursday and Friday. That's the due to that two-day workshop, our 12 noon call will be canceled. I won't be able to be there. I'll be at the actual workshop, and looking forward to meeting. I think there's quite a lot of the new people on with us today, so I'll be looking forward to getting a chance to meeting you in person. And so those of you that are brand new, that are getting on the call with us for the first time, we appreciate you sending in your questions, and we're going to get into exactly how to do that. We right now show, you should be able to see my Investment Dominator screen. Want to do a quick sound check and make sure that you all can see. All right. Arkansas, I can see, is on the line. Good evening. So glad to see you, Brian. And looks like you can see me and hear me. Okay, so that's good. All right. Thank you, Paul and John. Loud and clear. All right. That's wonderful. So many new faces, or new, I should say, new names on our list this evening. I'm glad that all of you could join. So we're going to, of course, get your questions answered here. As long as you can see my screen, we're going to, those of you that are joining us for the first time, if you could just type in your questions there in your control box, should be in your on your side. Just type in your question. Don't worry about raising your hand, because I don't normally see those because of so many of you that are on the line. But if you could send in your questions and just hit send, they will get to me, and hopefully I can get them addressed. Last Thursday we had a scheduling conflict, and I was in meetings, and so you had the very best on with you, uh, in Alex, who actually is the developer of the Investment Dominator. And so he's the man, and I'm sure he answered a lot of good questions. I saw some of the questions that he covered, so I'm glad that you had the very best on you with you on last Thursday. So this Thursday, of course, we'll be taking a bye, and we'll be canceling the class. So you should receive an email stating as such that the class will be canceled. And for today's class, the ones or today's webinar, the ones that are sending in your questions, it would help me greatly if, when you type in your question, you either put a question mark in front of your question or the word question spelled out. So then I can distinguish between a question and the if distinguish between a question and an actual comment. And I see some questions already coming in that we're going to get out as soon as I uh, finish with a couple of questions that I had from the last class, or the last webinar, which was actually a week ago now. So before I get on to that, those of you coming to the two-day event, if you will remember, let's see, we're at 4 minutes in here. If you will remember to, obviously you can log on to the Investment Dominator, but remember what we're going to be doing at the live two-day event. We're going to be sending out some actual documents, letters from there. So we want to make sure you have your signature filled in, and that you have your company info into the Investment Dominator. And of course, if you have your custom domain set up, or at least have gone through those instructions, and hopefully have them set up in your particular account within the Investment Dominator, that will help us greatly to expedite those sessions on Thursday and Friday. So that's what we're requesting. You have the big three set up. So over the weekend, what did come in was a question we had from John, and when having, oh wow, you all are really sending in your questions good. Okay, Cesar and Shonda, if you're not hearing any sound, you could have a microphone issue um, on your computer on that end. My indicators are showing that I'm got my sound up quite a bit, as a matter of fact. So, and I think others are hearing me. Okay, yes, I've gotten input from others that they can hear just fine. So, if you could look for the microphone on your side, and if not, go out, exit out of the system and come back in, and hopefully that will clear up any volume issues that you might be having. Okay, so as we move on here, hope you can hear, at least see my screen. Remember that these sessions are being recorded, so if you can't hear me right now, you can always go back and you can hear the broadcast, on your system. You can just call it up, go into Investment Dominator, call up for this date, and you will hear everything that I'm saying and sharing with everybody right now, as well as see my screen. Okay, so I want to get right into taking some, handling some questions. We've got, wow, quite a few coming in. So the first one I had from the other day that came from John, he was asking about a display issue that he was having. So he says basically, I'm having some data display issues in the land deals in the Investment Dominator. And I looked at a screenshot that he had, and basically, if you can see my screen right now, you'll see I have all these prospect records. Well, it looked like his first prospect record, the owner's name was showing, but in a lot of the subsequent records, there was no owner's name showing in a lot of these records. Now you see obviously on my screen, you can see the names showing. So I went into and I edited some of the records that were associated. Okay, what's going on here? So I went in and I actually edited some of the records that were giving us an issue, and I noticed that he had, the owner's name was populated just like you see here. So I just wanted to make sure everyone knew that there's one of two issues that could be going on. You do have a view button up here, a view function, which normally if it was a view issue, the entire column would be missing. But I just want to call your attention to this view. That is one way you can go in and check, and you can customize your view within Investment Dominator. And you can just, you see the items that are selected or checked are all of the items that should be showing. And as you can see, we have ID and status, owner, etc., right across the screen, right on through to liens. So that's all controlled in our view. So if there's a column that you're not seeing, that could be one of the issues, the fact that your view needs to be modified. But in the case where he had one owner showing and the subsequent ones were not, um, excellent, Cesar. I'm glad you got your sound working. Good. We do look for another issue that could be happening in the system. And again, so glad to see so many of the questions coming through. We'll get to them as quickly as we can. And if we can't get them answered today, don't worry about it. We will definitely have them answered by the next call, which for us will be next Monday, okay? But I'll do my best to get them answered today. So the other issue that might, if you're having any kind of display issues within Investment Dominator where you have data, but it's just not being displayed, I want you to search our user guide and put in clear your browser, and we're going to say the cache. Now, cache is just one of those technical terms, okay? And it's all it really means is that the There's temporary, every browser has temporary data that gets stored when you frequently access, that system or that particular um, system, like in this case, it'd be Investment Dominator or several other systems or applications that you might go in. There's a temporary data storage area that gets accessed frequently. So the computer stores the addresses of those different functions that you go in and out of, those different applications. Um, so once data is stored, it can be accessed much more quickly. So it puts it in your RAM area so that you can then access that information quickly. So if you want to clear your cache, you go into this area where it says clear your browser cache. It's an article, and it's basically going to be set up for the different types of browsers. The first one here is instructions on how you clear cache for Chrome. And then if you're using Firefox, how would you clear cache for Firefox? And then instructions for how you would do that for Safari. And if you're on a Samsung, if you're on an Android type device, how would you clear cache there? So that basically, and if you're an Internet Explorer, and then obviously for Edge, these are the more modern browsers, and then if you have an iPhone. So please refer to this article, How to Clear Your Browser Cache, if you're having any kind of display issue, and hopefully that will clear it up for you. Okay, so let me see if I can start addressing some of these questions that we have here coming in. Some of these, wow, I tell you, quite a few. Okay, let's see. Okay, so we had a question from Roberto, merging list over merging list to a first letter. Okay, basically for any letters that you want to put any merge any items into, and your first letter is your neutral letter. So I'm assuming that's what we're speaking of. We can definitely, so I'm going to clear this one. We can definitely talk about how to merge. I just have to make sure I write the question down here. Over merging lists. And I'm hoping that I'm getting the question correct here. If you anything you want to merge into your first letter, which is your neutral letter, you're going to have to create what we call a custom letter. So the first thing that I would do is search our user guide and custom, see if we can find it under that. Let's see. Okay, how to customize Jack's neutral letter is the article that we would be looking for. So this is the first letter that goes out, the neutral letter, and that is the letter that goes out to all of your customers that say, hey, I'm interested in buying your land. So we want to bring up this particular article, and the reason why is because we're going to create a custom document, and in this custom document, we're going to actually copy this text in to the actual document. So we'd go back into, just to give you a quick overview, this is how you would handle creating a custom document. And all I did was go under customize, and then I'm going to list custom documents, opened out custom documents, and I'm going to say add a document here. Okay, and we're going to say this is going to be for land only. And under the document file type, of course, I usually select both. You can select either document or PDF, and I select both. And I'm going to say, we'll just say Toes Custom 01. We'll just call it that for right now. But anyway, you're gonna call it, and it's a custom, and it's a neutral letter. All right. So we'll just call it that for the sake of a name. Call it some name that you like, and for the status, and obviously this is for prospect status, and we're going to leave it portrait. And now right here, if you wanted to insert any fields, now this is where I'm thinking, I'm understanding this is, can we go over merging list in merging list to first letter? And I think, Roberto, I want to make sure I understand your question. If I wanted to merge a field into the actual letter, this is where I would actually merge any fields. Now, if you're talking about, actually, it sounds like you might be talking about importing your lists into for the first letter. And if that's the case, Roberto, just give me a yes so that I can know that that's exactly what you're talking about. Okay, okay, got you. Good, good, good. All right, you're actually talking about a list, not necessarily merging the letters. So I'm going to get out of this. Okay. Okay. So if you want to talk about a list, that's importing your list. What we would do, we'd come into our search user guide, and I want to just call your attention, those of you that are brand new, to importing. Search user guide, and it'll come up with how to import your list for land investing, which is exactly what we want to do here. And basically, if you want to bring in a list that you have on your computer, you want to import, you want to make sure you've got these field names. There's 11 particular field names. It's into ID. So these 11 fields must be present, and it's just like you see here: last name, company, address, city, state, zip, APN, exactly, property, county, property, state. So these 11 fields must exist, and they're required. And obviously, if you have the type, if the type is individual, okay, you don't need a company name. Now, if the type is company, obviously, you need a company name. But if the type is individual, you do not need a company name, but you do need a last name and a first name to be present. So that is that's the format that has to happen for you to import. And just real quickly, I will show you a list so that you can see. It'll be easier to explain. Let's see, demo data files and import. Okay, so let me select one here that we will. Let's see if this is a good one. Okay, so this is an example of the format of the files that you're going to import into Investment Dominator. Okay, I tell you, there's so many of you on the call today. I'm hoping I can get to all these questions. In any case, you want these are your headers, and remember I said you have to have type, first name, last name, company, address, city, state, zip, etc. Got to be in that particular order. As long as you have them with these column names here, and the data must associate. So in the type field, you must have individual or company associated with that record. And you notice here when I have company, I don't have a first and last name, and where I have an individual, I don't have a company name. So that's the way the records come in. And then obviously you have the address, city, state, zip. And what we're going to do with this type of record or any other import, we're going to come up here, our land deals, and you're just going to say import. And remember, we're using the bulk level import, and you hit import, and you want to create new records, right? So you just leave that checked as it is, and you go here at this point and you choose your file. And once you've selected your file, which means you have to search your computer where your file is actually located. And in this case, it's mine is buried a little bit deep here. So I'm going to select one of my imports, and I'm just going to double click on that, and it brings that file right in to Investment Dominator. And the next thing I'm going to say is upload list. Now when I upload list, it's going to bring all of those records into my Investment Dominator account in prospect status. So this is where when they're brought into prospect status, if you're using letterprinting.net, you obviously at this point want to have those records sent to letterprinting.net. So they will print them out for you. If you're printing them yourself, this is where you would print out your records, and then of course you have to stuff the envelopes yourself. A lot of our students are using letterprinting.net. So at this point, all the records I have in prospect status, I'm going to now go to generate documents, and I automatically create a .csv file here that has all of my records that are in prospect status. I'm going to open that up just so you can see what it looks like here. And here all those records, Investment Dominator puts a unique identifier on all those records, and this is the actual file. If you wanted to send this to letterprinting.net, they would take this file, and when you send this CSV file along with your neutral letter template and your neutral letter envelope, those three pieces of information, that's how you'll get your records printed out. And that's how we basically upload a list into Investment Dominator for them to be processed. And the very last step, remember, is to hit your bulk update, and that's going to move all the records from prospect status into mail letter 1 status. Now, we've had this conversation a couple of times, but I'm recommending that you only bring in the records that you want to process each week. Now, a lot of students are bringing in records. They're bringing in all of their records, so they have thousands of records in Investment Dominator at one time. So I'm hoping I'm answering some of these other questions. Wow, that are keep coming in. But if they are in prospect status and you have all of your records in here in prospect status, that was one of the questions we had also. How do you deal with these records that are already in my Investment Dominator? And let's say I've got several thousand records in here, and I only want to process, maybe 200 or 300 of them. So I'm going to use this unique identifier over here to the left. What I'm going to do is to deal, I'm just going to put down this question here, with a subset of all records in prospect status. So if I have several thousand records and I only want to select a few of them, I'm going to, you either have to come over here and you would have to select one by one so that you could have just the records you want to deal with, or I can come up here in my search and I'm going to search for property ID range. Now remember, this is your property ID over here to the left, these numbers, and they're usually sequential from within Investment Dominator. So let's say I wanted to select property ID range. I'm going to select 247 through 252. Now, this is obviously just a few records in for demonstration, but you could be selecting 300 or 400 records here at any one time. And you say search, and the system only brings back in the search criteria the records that you selected in that particular search criteria. Now, at this point, you want to make sure that you hit select all so that it automatically selects the records that you're interested in. And at this point, if these are the records that I want to send to letterprinting.net, I then want to export them. So I would say export. It creates a .csv file, which is an Excel file. Open that file up. And as you can see, it has these records that I selected in my search criteria. It's got the names. It's got a lot of other fields but you could save this file and send it to letterprinting.net, and they would be able to process your records as well. So that's just an example of how you would deal with records that you've already got in Investment Dominator. Now, the last step that you would take in this process is to change the status. Remember, you want to change the status from prospect to mail letter 1. And you change it to mail letter 1, you confirm the move. Obviously it's 6 records here, but yours would be more like 200 or 300 records, and it'll confirm the move all at one time. And so then the next time, I'm going to clear my search here because I don't want to get rid of these records. The next time when you come in to process your records, you won't get those same records again because they will be moved into mail letter 1 status, which is your next status. So I'm hoping that brings a little clarity in how you deal with multiple records that you already have in your system. That may be one of the questions I have here right now. Let's see. Okay. So when uploading, okay, David says when uploading .csv file, why does the result say unknown file format? Unknown file format. Okay, and you're saying it is a .csv file, and it's giving you a record. As you can see, I just imported. You said you're uploading a file. So I'm wondering, are you actually importing this file into Investment Dominator? Are you using the import command to import that .csv file? So that's the first question. If you are using a .csv file that you're importing, and if it is in the, let's see, if the file is in this format, Dave, this format being, that you have, oh, excuse me, nope, not that one. This format here. If you're importing a record into or a file into Investment Dominator, this is a .csv file, as you can see, and it's in the, with type, first name, last name, you have columns just like this. And these are the only columns that you're having showing, that you should not be getting an unknown file format. I would check my file extension here and make sure it is a .csv file. And if what you might be, let me see, I'm going to go on and import one here and see. Load list. Okay, 8 rows imported completely. This result, now you notice it has, record number 10, invalid type, but that wouldn't be my file format. So why you're getting that invalid format, I would think it's because it may not be a .csv file, but if it is, and it's in that format that I just specified, you shouldn't really be getting an invalid file format. So I'm hoping that you can try with another .csv. If all else fails, open up another Excel file, if at all possible. If it's a small enough subset, and go on and select the records and just do a quick copy. I just did Control C to copy, and copy it to another Excel file and save that file, and then try importing that. Excel is a heavy computation type program, and you could have a bad cell in that particular file. I don't really know why yours. I'd have to look at your Excel file, Dave, to see exactly why you might be getting that particular message. So, my selling site, look up onboarding call to deal with this. Okay. All right. So we have David and Janice. Let's see if they're still on the call here with us. I hope they are. David and Janice is wondering. So they hooked up their external buying site, hooked up an external buying site. And when you say an external buying site, I'm assuming that means the buying site is not being used, it's not being hosted here by the Investment Dominator. It's not being created by Investment Dominator, but it's a site that you may already have in existence. But he said, but my selling site, will not hook up. Okay. But the selling site will not hook up. All right. We may have to have a little discussion about what you mean by hooking it up. But if you have an external site, you would have to interact with our, the Investment Dominators, what they call the API, outside of the normal way of us creating the buyer and selling sites. We have those here listed. You have an buyer site within the Investment Dominator. You would have a domain, obviously, that domain name that you got from GoDaddy, and you'd come in, but you'd be building your buying site within the Investment Dominator. If you're connecting to an external buying site that's already lifted, you're trying to interact with the buying site so that when people go to that particular buying site, they call up that domain or that URL. It actually is going to pull or bring that information pull it from Investment Dominator onto that buying site. If that's what's happening, you asked me, should you wait for your first onboarding call? That'd probably be a good idea. Should we discuss on the first onboard call? That would be a good idea. on the onboard call so I can get a better idea. This is for Dave and Janice. I'll get a better idea as to what exactly what kind of issues you're having there. So let's okay. David had another question here. Column titles. Okay. David, that's a good question. I think I partially answered that when I brought up how to import your list here. So Dave's question, it looks like, how do you get the titles? Let's see. How do you get the titles in the columns converted to the column titles that Investment Dominator accepts? Okay. Okay, remember I was saying here your field titles or your column names must be type first name, just like they're spelled here. So um, literally, if you're talking about your data that you're importing, now that would be this information. So your column names do have to be title, first name, last name, as you can see, spelled just like these columns that we have in our import list. And your question is, how do you get them, how do you convert them to the column titles that Investment Dominator, these are the only titles that Investment Dominator will accept. So in your file that you're importing, either you go and you type in, this title, type first name, last name, company, or you have a VA, a virtual assistant, um, create your data for you, and they know enough to type in these particular titles, but these are the only column headings that Investment Dominator will accept. And they're not going to be converted. You actually have to type in these particular column headings so that Investment Dominator will accept them, because once those records are imported, Investment Dominator looks specifically for a type to determine if it's dealing with an individual or company. Then it looks for the first name. If it's an individual, then it looks for the first and last name. If it's a company, it looks for the company name, and of course the address, city, state, etc. So I hope that answers your question. That's the only way to actually get those columns correct. So Investment Dominator knows what data is following in those columns, is you actually have to type them in. Okay. Okay. So I have a question here from, looks like another Dave, different Dave. Wow, I tell you, a lot of questions today. It said that David says, I went back, clarification to my question, went back to the old county and got a new list and imported it into the Investment Dominator. What happens to the old files? Okay. So Dave, you got a new list. It says you went back to the old county and got a new list, so a new list from the old county, and you imported that. And what happens to the old files? Okay. Well, what's going to happen is every time you import into Investment Dominator, every single time, if I imported the same data into Investment Dominator that I had before, Investment Dominator is going to look for any duplicates, first of all, and it's going to search. Let me make sure I'm correct about this. Okay, Investment Dominator is basically going to search by certain criteria. And I just want to make sure I get it correct, so I give you the right information here. So Investment Dominator will look for the APN, county, and state. So it's going to look for the APN, it'll look for the county, and it's going to look for the state. If it sees that these particular, for this APN already exists, if this county already exists, and this state already exists, at this particular point, it's going to consider that that's an existing property record. Because just for your knowledge, when Investment Dominator brings records in, there are two different records that get created. One is an owner record, which has the owner's information in it. The other is an actual land record, which will have a unique identifier here. It'll have a status, and it's going to have the county, it's going to state, county, and APN. So on the second import, if these records, Investment Dominator already finds out that the APN exists with the same county and state, it's going to consider that a duplicate record, and it's going to consider that a record that already exists. So when you do process or you do import those records, it's going to come out now. The results of that are going to be, there'll be so many records that it's going to say already exist. So basically, it will not create a new record for those that are coming in. So that's all that's going to happen, is it will consider that a duplicate, it'll bypass it, and you shouldn't have any duplicates in your system if Investment Dominator determines that those records already exist. You should be okay. But I just want everybody to know that every time you import into Investment Dominator, it's going to create this a brand new ID here, which is a record or a land record ID, a unique land record ID for every prospect. When it looks and says, okay, we got a new APN, we got a new county, and that combination of data is brand new, it creates a land record automatically. If it finds a name that's different than a previous name, it's going to create a different customer record and then associate that land record to that customer record. So I'm hoping that will help answer your question. That's one thing that's really great about Investment Dominator. It does help you not have a lot of duplicate records in your system. The way that Alex and company has designed the system, it's almost foolproof for that. So let's see. Next question. Okay. Okay, these are some pretty basic questions on. It said, how do you upload a customized neutral letter in Investment Dominator? Good question. Let's see. Wow, how to upload a customized neutral letter. And we started to explain that in the beginning of the call, if you remember. I'm going to go back to help and search our user guide, and we'll just look for Jack here. And we're going to say basically how to customize Jack's neutral letter. We're going to look for that particular article. And if you want to customize a neutral letter, and specifically this is load a customized neutral letter into Investment Dominator. That's what I started to explain. You're going to use this list of instructions, and I'll show you how you create that, just so when you get to the point where there's a custom documents here, I'm going to add a document. I'm going to come right in here and say it's going to be for land only, document and PDF. I normally say both because I want the system to actually create me a document file, which is like a Word file. I also want it to create a PDF file so that, you know, if you want to send this as a document template, it will create, you'll have a PDF file already created. So custom neutral, and let's say we'll call it 07. Okay, the status here is obviously prospect. We're going to leave it portrait. We're not going to insert any particular fields. You know, this is where if you wanted to insert any additional fields that was not already on the letter, you could. We're recommending, especially if you're new, that you leave the letters as they are. And here is where we're going to bring in the source for Jack's neutral letter. So I'm going to hit the button that says source, and as you can see, it grays out. So now what it's doing, it's disabling all of these functions so that you because basically it's waiting for you to add HTML code or HTML, the HTML version of Jack's neutral letter into this box here, so that you don't have to worry about knowing HTML. All you do is you come down here and you left click on this content. And as you can see, it changes to all of the HTML. Now I want to copy this, so I can either select every line like this, you know, click and drag, so I can select every line, or I can hit the Control key and A, and that selects everything as well. So once I hit that, I've selected all my data. I want to do Control C. That's going to select all that text. And here we are. So we hit source. Now I'm going to position my cursor in that box. I'm going to hit a Control V as in Victor. Control V, and that puts all of this that I just copied into the box. Now, obviously, we don't want you to have to modify HTML code here because none of us really knows that, you know, with any expertise. So hit source again, and voila, it brings back you're going to see your neutral letter in readable format. So if I wanted to you know, customize this letter, let's say I just want to add, we don't recommend, if you're brand new, we don't recommend you really modifying this letter, but it says, I'm very interested in purchasing this property from you. If I just want to say, call ASAP, okay, whatever you wanted to customize, you can then just type it in English here, and I'm just going to make sure I bold that so I can tell. And really the cool thing about, you know, this particular system here, you can add, I mean, you can customize any letter. You can insert bullet points. I believe you can even insert images into this letter. But like I say, we recommend, if you're new, that you just leave the letter as is. I'm just going to put this call ASAP in here so that we can tell our custom neutral letter. Okay, and as you can see, it's going to bring in all of the information that you need. Okay, so at this particular point, I'm going to say label. I'm going to select label. I'm going to allow export data, yes. Allow bulk data, yes. Per each property. and I'm going to move this to, and actually after the prospect status, we'll move it to mail letter 1, and I'm going to say I'm going to add my new document. Now, the way the Investment Dominator works, whenever you add, as you can see, I've added a few documents here, it puts it on the very last entry. Okay, so here is my custom neutral letter. And another cool feature here, okay, well, we're running out of time here, is how to do my document preview. You can preview a document. See, before Alex and company put in this new preview document here, we would always have to go back into the land deals record and actually generate our new custom document. But you can just document preview right here, and you can see exactly what it's going to look like. And as you can see, my custom document that it came out with was right here. I say call ASAP. So now that's how, if I were just going to, do one particular letter at a time, but let's say I wanted to use my new custom document for all of my neutral letters now, right? So I would come up here and I can say generate documents at the bulk level. These commands up here, for those of you who are new, are bulk level commands based on the status of these records. And so all of my prospect records now, when I say generate documents, are going to come back, and I would come down and I'd say, okay, here's my custom neutral letter that I created, and any of the templates that I'm going to use are now here with all of should have my letters that they'll open up in Word, and it takes a minute since there's a few letters it's creating. But as I bring them over, as you can see, and I enable editing, it creates using my custom, remember I said call ASAP, all of these custom letters now, my neutral letters for all of my documents are in Investment Dominator. And that's basically how you create a neutral letter, a custom neutral letter, and then have it utilized at the time that you want to create your neutral letter. And once you create your neutral letter, either you'd mail out your .csv file or send your .csv file to letterprinting.net, have them print all your letters off, and don't forget at the end to do your bulk update records. So you move all of your prospect records to the mail letter 1 status. This is something that the students forget to do, and so basically those records will stay in prospect status. Taking a while for it to get back here. If I go back in land deals. So these records, if they stay in prospect status, when you come in next week to do the same process, what's going to happen is you're going to print out all of your prospect records all over again that you sent the previous week. So please don't forget to update your status there. Okay. Wow, we've had quite a few questions come in. I'm sorry I couldn't get to all of them today, but we will. We had another question come in, which I think is a pretty important one here. It has to, I mean, all the questions are important. Don't get me wrong. They're all important. I might be able to get to this question right before as our last question for the day. And it has to do, let's see who sent this question in here. I think it came from a poll. And why should we not always depend on the owner's name? I'm hoping I understand this question correctly. Why should I not always depend on the owner's name being correct in the prospect status records? Okay, that's a good question. So just real quick, I'll answer this. We'll go into maybe a little more detail on our next call, but basically as the records come in, as you import them, let's say you get them from the county or you get them from Agent Pro 247, or you might, some of you may be getting them from Robo Gateway. The owner's name, as it's showing here, as I overlay this, it said this is the caller's first name and the caller's last name. So sometimes the actual name that comes out of the county, or that comes from Agent Pro 247 or the county list, may or may not be correct. And I'll have an example here. Let's see, I copied in real quick. This is an example of an actual county record list. And as you can see, the name that was actually on the record that came in from the county was this May Karim, but the actual owner of the property was Alice Williams. So the question that Paul was asking is a very good question. Why can we not always depend on the name that we get from the county being correct? There are many reasons. The property may have been sold to another person since, and it's so it has a new owner. That could be one reason. The actual owner could be handicapped or debilitated in some way, and so it's a care of situation. This is C/O May Karim. So my point here is you can't always depend on the owner's name that actually comes out of either Agent Pro or the county list being 100% correct. So by the time you send the prospect record out, remember you're going to send this out, the customer is going to call back and say, hey, yes, I want an offer on my property. And hopefully if you have you're working with either yourself or someone, a VA, or let's say someone from Pat Live, if you're working with Pat Live, they will put the record in pending preliminary research, which says, hey, I want an offer on this property. At that time, when you go in and you edit this record and you're going to give an offer on this property, you want to check and verify that the owner's information that's showing on this record, the owner's information here, is absolutely correct. The caller could be one person, but the owner record, it could have changed just from the time that you sent that prospect record out. Now the county's updated their records, and the actual owner's name is different. So what I learned in this particular, this is just an example, I learned in this particular example, they had the owner as, May Karim, and that was incorrect. The actual owner was Alice Williams. So when I went out in the county to search for this record, I was searching under this name, May Karim. Well, obviously I didn't find anything. So I was fortunate that I could take the parcel ID and I could search this county as well by the parcel ID. And that's when I found out that the actual owner was Alice Williams. So my point to you is that when you get to the point where you're actually generating an offer on these properties, always verify the actual owner's name. Could be very different than the caller's name. And you also want to double check and verify that the APN number is also correct as well. And I'm sorry, people, that's all we've got time for today. But thank you again. Now, I will be looking at your questions. I'll look at every single question for the next call, and I will have answers for you by the next call for every single question that I did not get to today. So if I could leave this thought with you today, when you rise early in the morning, give thanks for the light, for your life, and for your strength. Give thanks for your food and for the joy of living. If you see no reason to give thanks, the fault may lie within yourself. And that came from a philosopher, uh, Tecumseh. Tecumseh. So remember, give thanks for everything that happens to you, for just being able to rise up in the morning and being able to be in this land business. It's a fantastic business. We've just really enjoyed it the couple of years we've been in it. And I want to encourage you to keep going forward. And I'll look forward to meeting those of you that will show up at the 2-day workshop. I will look forward to meeting you in person. Have a great remainder of your evening and a great week. Take care now. Bye-bye.